What if your TSH is higher than it should be, but not quite high enough to be on medication? Where does that leave you? You're struggling with all the textbook symptoms of hypothyroidism. You're exhausted, your hair is falling out, you're bloated, you're foggy all the time. But when you go to your doctor, you're told your levels aren't quite high enough, you don't need to be on medication, so let's just watch and wait. On one hand, you might feel happy that you don't have to be on thyroid medication, but you also know that there has to be something that you can do to be proactive, to get your TSH down, to get rid of your symptoms, and to start feeling better. And yet, doctors keep telling you that there's nothing to do but watch and wait. Wait until your thyroid dies. I've heard this so many times from patients that their endocrinologist will say, we're just going to wait until your thyroid dies, when your thyroid function no longer exists, and then, and only then, will we put you on medication and hope that you feel better at that point. I'm here today to tell you to ditch that advice once and for all, because if you continue to do nothing, to just sit back, wait around, and just wait for it to get worse, then chances are it will. So let's talk about all the things that you should start doing right now. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Rochelle Long, a naturopathic doctor here in Toronto, and I've spent over a decade helping women with hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's get back their energy, lose weight, and feel like themselves again by getting to the root cause of their thyroid issues. First, I suppose we should name this condition, this state where you know your thyroid isn't functioning 100% because your TSH is higher than it should be, but not so high that you have full-blown hypothyroidism. We call this subclinical hypothyroidism. So the technical definition of this is when your TSH is between a 4 and a 10, but your T4 and your T3 levels are still normal. So many people are walking around with subclinical hypothyroidism and have no idea. And that's because doctors don't really hand out this diagnosis like they do with hypothyroidism. And I also think it's because they don't really care that you have subclinical hypothyroidism. There's nothing to do from a conventional sense. You know, one of the things that I love about naturopathic and functional medicine is that we're all about being proactive. We're not just looking for big problems and treating things like symptoms and putting band-aids on it. We want to optimize your health. So when something like your TSH comes back suboptimal, like having an elevated TSH, we want to take it seriously. We don't want to brush it off and say, well, nothing's really wrong right now, or, your symptoms aren't that bad yet. We want to start investigating why your TSH is elevated to begin with. And this is what is missing from the care of so many of my patients. And they're being dismissed time and time again because they don't fit in this box, even if they experience all the symptoms. And so now they're just left to struggle on their own with no guidance, no advice, and no support. So if this is you, then you are in the right place, because I want to start to dive deep into this topic and talk about all the things that you need to be doing right now. Okay, so the most important thing is to figure out the root cause of your subclinical hypothyroidism. That way you'll know exactly where to start and what your next steps are to address this issue. Now, there are about 7 major root causes of subclinical hypothyroidism. I'm not going to go into every single one in detail, but I do want to mention them and just list them out so that you guys have an understanding of what could actually cause this problem. So the most common one that I see is autoimmune thyroid disease, like HASHIMOTO'S. And there's so much to talk about around this topic, so I do want to circle back to this afterwards. Now, the second one is that certain pharmaceuticals can actually cause an increase in TSH. So drugs like antiarrhythmic drugs, lithium, and even certain antibiotics can cause an increase in TSH. But the good news is that once you discontinue that medication, or if you come off that medication, then TSH will often go back to normal. Now, the third cause is following a restrictive diet that involves low calorie intake, very little variety in foods, and even following something like veganism. And I see this so much in women who are trying to lose weight, because they will often resort to diets that involve low calorie, or they'll go keto, even vegetarianism, going vegan. But unfortunately, a lot of the times, all these things will backfire and cause even more issues for your thyroid and your metabolism. And I will expand on this in another YouTube video. Now, the fourth cause is similar, but it's actually more so due to specific nutrient deficiencies like iron, iodine, selenium, and vitamin D. So once again, if you're following a very restrictive diet, then it could be really hard to get optimal amounts of these nutrients. That said, these deficiencies could also be caused by absorption issues. And I see this a lot in patients with inflammatory bowel diseases and even conditions of the gut that reduce our ability to absorb our nutrients. So things like celiac disease, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, or even H. pylori infection. The fifth cause is fluctuations in hormones. Any period in a woman's life where there are huge fluctuations in estrogen, like puberty, postpartum, perimenopause, and menopause, we will see changes in thyroid and immune function. This could cause either a temporary or permanent change in TSH levels. The sixth cause is stress. Now, there is research showing that our TSH can actually rise within 20 minutes of an acute stressor. So if you're someone who is dealing with a lot of stress or has been dealing with chronic levels of stress, then it would make a lot of sense as to why your TSH has been chronically elevated. Our adrenal function, which helps us with managing stress, is very closely linked to thyroid function. And that's why stress is so often a trigger for someone who is either developing a thyroid issue or experiencing a flare up in their thyroid symptoms. Now, the seventh and last cause that we're going to talk about today is exposure to environmental toxins. We are constantly bombarded with toxins in our day to day lives, but there are certain ones that have the ability to impair thyroid function and worsen autoimmunity. In particular, lead exposure and endocrine disruptors have been shown to increase TSH. So common household and personal care products like plastics, makeup, cleaners, all have the potential to disrupt our thyroid function and raise your TSH. All right, let's circle back to autoimmune thyroid disease, because this is one of the most common root causes of subclinical hypothyroidism that I see. So I do want to spend some time here because of the fact that I think this is going to apply to the majority of you watching this video. So there are 4 stages of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And what that means is that Hashimoto's is a progressive disease. You don't just wake up one day with Hashimoto's, it progresses over time. So in stages 1 and 2, we start to see some immune system dysregulation already occurring. Thyroid antibodies are now elevated, but thyroid hormones like TSH, T4, T3 are all normal. When we reach stage 3, this is when we start noticing changes to TSH. We start to see an increase in TSH. Now, this increase isn't random. It's because of gradual thyroid damage that has been accumulated over years of thyroid antibody production. Now, the last stage, stage 4, is when we start seeing changes to all of the thyroid hormones, which is now classified as overt hypothyroidism. So you can see how having subclinical hypothyroidism as kind of like the precursor to overt hypothyroidism is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to change the trajectory of your thyroid disease. You can go backwards along this spectrum. Just because you're at stage 3 Hashimoto's doesn't mean that it has to progress into stage 4, even if that is the narrative in the conventional medical world. So often I see women stuck at this stage. Because again, having elevated thyroid antibodies and having a slightly higher TSH but normal T4 and T3 does not make you a candidate for medication. So you know that there's obviously an issue here, but you don't know how to fix it. And no one is telling you how, and no one is telling you that you can. And I want to help you move out of this stage. And I want you to know that you are not stuck here because you have an opportunity. Instead of solely focusing on the thyroid, it's time to focus on what is causing the issue to begin with. And in this particular situation, it's the immune system. This is your focus. This is what you need to work on over the next few months if you want to start bringing your thyroid antibodies down to start normalizing your TSH and to start feeling better. Because your symptoms right now is not just because of your thyroid. It's because you have a dysregulated immune system. You know how much inflammation occurs because of that alone? You know how many systems and processes in the body are affected by the immune system? It's a lot, and it's enough to cause symptoms even if your thyroid was functioning completely normally. Now, one of your next steps is to start the investigative work. Get some thorough blood work done so that you know exactly what is going on. First, we need to do a full thyroid panel, which includes a TSH, free T4, free T3, antithyroid globulin, anti-TPO, and reverse T3. It's also important to check nutrient status, so testing vitamin D, ferritin, and an iron panel, as well as vitamin B12, is essential. Next, we want to look at metabolic markers like fasting insulin, fasting glucose, a lipid panel, and liver function. I would also look at inflammatory markers like ESR and CRP. And if any of those things come back abnormal, then you know where to start. So if you've been told to simply just watch and wait, I want you to know something. You're not crazy for wanting to be proactive. You need to be. Subclinical hypothyroidism isn't just a meaningless stage of thyroid disease. It is actually one of the most important windows of opportunity to change something. Because once you understand what's driving your elevated TSH, whether that's autoimmunity, nutrient deficiencies, stress, metabolic dysfunction, or something else, you can start addressing the root cause and potentially prevent this from actually progressing into full-blown hypothyroidism. And that's exactly the work that I do with my patients. So if this is something that you're dealing with right now, I want you to start asking better questions. Look deeper, investigate the root causes, and don't just accept watch and wait as the answer. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe to this channel because every week I'm going to be sharing more information to help you understand your thyroid, your symptoms, and what you can actually do to start feeling better. I'll see you in the next video.